This is the HTML5 big picture talk. I'm going to go over a lot of HTML5 features outside of just the video tag. So a lot of this conference has to do with a very close focus on the video tag, and I'm sort of going to talk a little bit about all the other stuff that comes in the HTML5 package and talk a little bit about how it plays into working with a given player that you might want to write, and sort of looking forward into the future as to what implications what the implications are of the HTML5 platform becoming so dominant. Here's the basic overview. I'm going to look at the HTML5 platform. We're going to look at a bunch of features, and then we're going to look at some practical applications of HTML5. Those are look at leading edge applications that are taking advantage of the feature set and looking at the future as well. So we, as the writing on the wall has been written and read several times at this point, we can sort of see this massive momentum towards HTML5 being the base runtime for all rich media applications delivered through the internet. I think is basically the end game that we're looking at. And we can see it now on pretty much every browser, every new phone and tablet, every smart TV, and very soon coming to video game consoles and set-top boxes, and becoming more and more critical in being able to deliver rich media applications through the web. And we can even see it starting to be used for native applications on phones, and with things like PhoneGap, you have, even though the application is specific to a given device, like say an iPhone or an iPad, the underlying interface, in order to optimize your time when you're writing these applications, you're going to end up writing those in HTML5 as well. So I think we'll see even more of that over the next few years as we have these different devices and platforms that we're targeting. You usually don't want to write your application once for Android and for iOS and for and also your actual website that people are going to visit, as well as sort of the Chromebooks and the Google App Stores. And now Mozilla is also working on a project to have a phone-like operating system. So there'll be even more places for your HTML5 application to be running, and then maybe something on top that translates that into the native environment if you need any features that are specific to that platform. And of course, Microsoft moving in this direction as well with Nebo. Anyway, the Microsoft's also transitioning to using HTML5 for underlying platform for delivering apps within the IE 10 and Windows 8. This is a chart I like to show because it sort of highlights sort of the rapid feature proliferation. So just from a few years ago, if you rewind to 2008, we were on Firefox 2, we were on IE 7, and Chrome hadn't even come out yet. And we can see over the course of a few years, we see this massive proliferation of all the components of the HTML5 feature stack sort of propagating across the platform ecosystem. So it's kind of a fun little chart there. And HTML5 is growing fast, as that chart shows. Not only in addition to the market share growing very quickly, the feature set is also expanding as well. So this chart is old. You notice, even though it's from 2011, we only have Chrome was only on, Firefox was only on version 4, which they're now on like 7 or 8, or who knows what number they're on. And Chrome at this point in time was also much older. We're getting into the point where we have these browsers that are constantly updating their platform, so that it's difficult to keep track of all the features that are being propagated right now. But we'll give it a try, and we'll go through all these features and see what they're useful for, and sort of give you a high-level one-slide overview of each of these components. First, we're going to look at sort of the development of JavaScript APIs that have extended the base JavaScript runtime with additional tools and components that you can use when building web applications. This goes from like client-side storage to communication, real-time communication with WebSockets, and integration into the desktop with drag and drop files and desktop notifications, as well as file APIs where you can directly manipulate files, something that wasn't previously possible, and geolocation, which is more useful for mobile devices, of course, but all relevant in the HTML5 platform. Here's a basic version of a web storage. This is how you would store some values on a computer, on a browser. And this is sort of like super cookies. And we all are familiar with cookies where you can sort of store a bit of information on the computer, but this sort of opens it up for storing more information and building applications that are a little bit more resistant to the browser crashing or something. Like if you're in the middle of a web form filling it out, you can save this. You can save that data to the local client before it even sends that data across the net. So just that allows you to build a little bit more robustness into your web application. Web SQL databases, I don't know if this will really pick up that much. It's not supported in Firefox, but it is supported in the WebKit-based browsers. It enables you to do sort of simple, we'll have client-side databases, which again is useful for offline applications. It may also be useful in the type of applications that you would see when you're writing one for a mobile device where you want to do data interactions on the device locally, and then push that up to the server or be able to do quick response on a local library of information for a particular mobile device where you don't always have the network readily available or there's some delay in communicating to the server. Along those same lines, we have a new tool called Application Cache. This enables you to cache your application locally. So this is, of course, very useful, again, in environments where you have inconsistent network connectivity, such as mobile devices, and you want to be able to have your application still be able to interact with it even while the server is not readily available. It also can help with performance. If your application grows in complexity and it's a very large program, you don't want to have to download it every time the user visits the site. You can cache it all in the web application cache. And it's also very useful for when you have lots of resources that are changing. So you have something like for example, a web video player, and you have a bunch of different plugins, and maybe you just want to update one plugin. You don't need to package the whole thing again. You can reference that particular resource within the manifest and just push out a new version for that piece of your overall application. Web workers, also a very useful tool for the modern rich web application. This enables you to do calculations outside the main thread. And the demo they have here is there's charting some lot. You see all these dots on the map. They just chart the locations. If we press it without web workers, you notice the map becomes non-interactive now because the thread of the browser, the primary thread of the browser, is now focused on drawing those connections between those points and assuming it does it. There we go. Now, once it's done, now you can interact. But if, on the other hand, if we use web workers, you can still interact with the application, and your interface can remain responsive while you do processing-intensive operations in a web worker. And that's, of course, useful for any time your application is doing anything that's resource-intensive. You want to keep that away from your UI thread so that the application remains responsive. And we have web sockets, which we mentioned in the overview there. And these are useful for doing the communication to a browser. So normally you have this AJAX type style request where you do a push and the server gives you a response. With web workers, you can sort of set up asynchronous communication between your browser and the server, and enables you to do sort of more real-time-ish communication with the server. So if you wanted to like stream, it's for like doing chat or eventually streaming input. So maybe you have some input from your device and you want to stream that to the server. That's also useful. It shouldn't be confused with WebRTC, which is another standard which enables you to communicate directly with other peers, and that's going to be used more for VoIP applications and video chat, but that's not as well developed yet, so we'll get into that later. Notifications are useful for sort of building web applications. Again, so imagine you have an email application and you want to notify the user on their desktop that a new mail has come in, unless they're not there, and it could be that they're not actually looking at that tab right now. So you want to have a way to sort of notify the user that something is happening, and they have notifications. So and once you allow the application to do notifications, it will then be able to tell your desktop, like, hey, you got a new email. Or in the case of a phone, it'll have a step, it'll, within the Android, for example, you have the top bar of your browser, or the top bar of your UI that has like little notifications, and that's how you address that space from within the browser. And it's really useful so that you can build applications that have life outside of that particular tab, or life outside of that that page being open. And drag and drop, which we're all familiar with, but there was a lot of hacky implementations in HTML4, and it got sort of cleaned up in HTML5, so you get a little bit more rich data about the type of things that you drag about, which is helpful for building applications. I don't know if it's in this one. I don't think I have it in this one, but also you can drag files from your desktop into the browser now. So it's able to handle drag and drop from the desktop environment, again, all going towards this idea of building complete real web applications in the browser. The file system APIs, of course, are able to write to data like a file, so you can generate files to, like when you save a document or you want to open a file, you can read those files locally. You don't have to upload them to the server before JavaScript can begin to interact with them. So you can have sort of raw file access. We've used that in a few projects on Wikimedia, for example, on the upload interface. Once you pull in your image assets, we're able to read the EXIF information and the geolocation stuff and do an AJAX call to get the geo coordinates of that photo all in JavaScript before we even upload it to the server. And then geolocation is allowed to see our location there. And here we are. Basically just pretty obvious, just lets you get the location of that particular client, which is useful for lots of applications, of course, being able to know where the user is. It's especially useful on mobile applications for obvious reasons. You're able to grab that information and communicate it to your web service and pull up relevant geo-located information. In addition, so that concludes the JavaScript extensions, or the ones that we're talking about right now anyway. And now we'll go into a little bit about what was extended for the HTML semantics itself. And these are things like micro data formats, link relations, tools for accessibility, web forms, and of course favorite multimedia tags, and the concept of Canvas, Webgl, and SVG. So these are sort of pieces that were extended into the browser with HTML5, allowing for the embedding of things beyond just text and images. We're now talking about a canvas, which is sort of a place to, sort of a paint bucket where you can just paint pixels however you want, and Webgl, which brings in 3D components, and SVG, which has sort of been a long time vector format that's been around for a long time, but it's never quite been officially supported in the way that it is now with HTML5. And but we'll get into that in a second. Semantic tags just sort of give you article structure. Link relations, very useful for search engines to be able to categorize the type of link that you're sending. Of course, the nofollow was one of the first ones introduced to combat sort of spam situations. So if you had comments on your blog, you would tag all the links as nofollow so that there'd be no incentive to do spam commenting. But for some reason, that didn't stop the spammers from spamming blogs. But anyway, and then just just more semantic data about the page is you're able to represent that in the links that you're giving. Microdata, also useful, very useful for search engines. Here we have a few different microdata tags that allow you to identify the semantic properties of a given entity. So in this case, we have like a band, and it has the name of the name of the person, and then the band name, and then the nationality of that person. So it allows you to sort of define item types. This is sort of similar to Open Graph, the Facebook standard for sort of defining entities. I don't know which one is more widely, probably Open Graph's more widely used right now, just because it's the way to represent things within people's like feeds on Facebook. So I don't know if this particular microdata format will get as much traction as the Open Graph standard, but it's good to keep in mind that it also exists. Accessibility and Rich Internet Applications standard is also something that's part of HTML, and this helps your web application be more accessible to accessibility devices and human-assistive technologies. So you sort of define what the interface components are doing, and then you're able to describe those interface components in a way that a screen reader or some assistive technology can read. We also have new form types. These are useful for validating input. It's also useful for just creating simple sliders and things. No longer have to be defined in JavaScript. There's first-class support for them as a form widget. The other advantage of this is, say you're on a phone and you have limited real estate on your device for input. It's useful to say that this is a number, or this is a telephone number, and the device can present an appropriate input screen. And the same with iPhone I think iPhone also supports the type URL, which is useful. So it gives you a little .com button and everything. So you can tell the device what type of input you're inputting. And of course, the video tag is something that got added as a semantic representation of video and audio. I can just stop that one. And you've probably gotten lots of coverage of that over the past few days, so we won't dive too much into that. But I would just mention it in terms of it being richly integrated into all these other technologies that relate to it. So if you add like the CSS reflection or something, it's related to the video tag itself. It's in the page, and it can obey all the same CSS properties and everything else. The canvas element is a very powerful tool, as we'll show a little bit later with some of the example applications, that allows you to just draw raw pixels onto the screen. And it's fairly optimized. You can see a lot of people written like emulators in JavaScript to like play Nintendo games or Game Boy games, and that's all possible because you have this canvas that you can output to. It also supports basic export, so you can export it to a JPEG or something. It's just like a JPEG image, it's just a data URL. Which is useful if you want to, create like a Photoshop type application where you can save the video, where you can save the asset out. Webgl, of course, is something that is a big piece of HTML5 that's up and coming, and it, of course, gives you support for access to the 3D graphics hardware available on the device, and that's very useful for doing 3D things, but also it's also useful in just normal applications. But which we'll show an example. I don't know if people have seen that the latest Google Maps now uses WebGL for its rendering, so the performance is much better. We'll show that in a second. SVG, you can finally use SVG inline in HTML documents. This was a big boost to the format, because before you had to have very strictly defined SVG objects, and they weren't easy to address in JavaScript. It wasn't as easy to just build them out dynamically with a JavaScript application, but now it's much better supported. So you're able to make use of SVG graphics without too much headaches. And here's another SVG example. This is the famous Tiger SVG file. CSS also underwent a lot of improvements in the HTML5 specification process. We have CSS selectors now, so you can set up simple even odd row coloring, or new font support, so you can do web fonts that can get delivered through the web browser, so you actually can do custom web fonts as well. It's very useful for creating a particular design that you want to deliver. Improved text wrapping support, columns, number of columns for article text. Also just lots of little tools that make it a lot easier to do the things that we were sort of already doing, but with a lot of hacks. This makes less hacks, which is good. This is sort of some of the more fine-grained text controls, like the text stroke property. Not all these CSS properties are fully supported across all the browsers yet, but it does seem to be headed in that direction fairly quickly. The independent opacity of a background versus the font itself, which is useful for creating integrations of text on imagery. And again, the nice thing is that it's all unified, so this text could just as well be on top of a video stream. You have HSLA for controls of colors. Rounded corners are supported without hacks, which is nice. Gradients, you can generate gradients on the fly. It's also very useful for obvious reasons. Adjust the gradient here. Shadows, lots of fun tools to get text and graphics to display on your page however you want them. This is another little fun example they put together where they have the Web 2.0 logo creator. It's all easy to do with these technologies. Resizability is also natively supported now, so you don't need as many hacks to do resizes. this is really important. CSS transitions and CSS animations allow the browsers to optimize graphic animations and things. So you're able to, on the particular device, you're able to go directly to the graphics hardware as opposed to animating through JavaScript, which can be slow. When you animate on the graphics hardware directly, it doesn't have to wait for JavaScript to do everything. So it can be a lot faster and smoother and better take advantage of the graphics hardware. Animations, we have that's sort of what I was just talking about, CSS-based animations, also, again, animated on the graphics hardware, not on not with JavaScript. So it's faster, better, less hacky. Okay, so what can I use these features today? All these neat tools, it's hard to get a handle on exactly what I can take advantage of and what I can't, and what's useful for today and what needs to be postponed until tomorrow. And my suggestions for that would be to definitely take a close look at sort of JavaScript helper libraries. They're very useful towards addressing some of these issues. Of course, the main problem is this device fragmentation situation. I don't know if you guys have seen this blog post that was on the understatement.com a few weeks ago. This is a horrible chart, horrible nightmarish chart that, let's pull it up a little bigger here. This just shows the support drop-off for Android devices, which gives you, this is probably like the worst case scenario situation that we have right now in terms of trying to deploy a web application. Aside from the old Internet Explorers and their market dominance, there's this issue of these Androids that are just horribly outdated, and there's no easy fix here, because a lot of these aren't even, they just discontinue support for them, but they still exist, and what to do for all these devices is a big problem. Apple's actually been really good about pushing out updates for their older devices, which is really, really helpful, because then you don't have the situation where you have to support broken implementations. But I would argue that it's probably not going to be as big of a problem as it has been going forward. Yes, we've had to deal with a lot of pain with Internet Explorer 6 and 7, but we're sort of in a transition nowadays. You can see it now with the desktop browsers, and I think it'll carry over into the mobile devices in terms of more frequent updates and more consistent updates of a browser-based platform for all of the mobile devices as well, just because it's just going to be very critical to be able to deliver the type of applications that are going to be present on the web. You just need an up-to-date browser, so even if the whole platform can't be updated, say the Android is stuck at 3 or whatever it'll be a year from now, you would at least hope and see browsers updating for those devices. And you can see it a little bit with the Firefox for Android, or they'll probably be porting Chrome over at some point soon. So we'll have a more complete platform available across these devices, even if the whole operating system doesn't update as frequently as we would like. So we'll not have the 10-year support cycle of IE6 anytime again. That was probably the Windows XP will probably go down as the longest running operating system ever, and we'll never have that situation again, just because we've sort of transitioned into a network connected world where we can just push out these updates all the time. So it's just not going to work that way anymore. And as mentioned in the overview slide there, JavaScript libraries are your friend. You want to try to abstract away as much as possible all the time so that you can focus on what your application does, not all these underlying plumbing issues and inconsistencies among browser vendors. There's some example JavaScript libraries that help you detect the type of features that are available, like the modernizer is a pretty good one. It has pretty good support for detecting all the different types of features that are available in modern browsers. The other, hold on. This slideshow itself is also an HTML5 application. Let me go back to that slide. Sorry. Okay. HTML5 shim is also a little useful snippet. These are just like very small libraries that I'm highlighting here, and that's just because they're easier to integrate into something that you're already working on. If you want to integrate a full feature complete wrapper for a particular component, like the video tag, there's a lot more libraries to look at. We run this website called HTML5video.org, and we've sort of cataloged all the major HTML5 video players and sort of outlined a bunch of their features. I mean, this is just some of the features, but it's all done with Semantic Media Wiki, so you can sort of select different features across different players to sort of figure out which players have what features. You can see here, I'll open up one of them. And we also have all the players demoed on the site as well, so you can see what they look like, a bunch of information about them. But that's sort of like the type of tool you'd want to look at for cases where you want to abstract away a lot of the underlying issues with a particular feature, in this case the video tag, which I think is most pertinent to folks here. And when doing that, you get to just deal with the video tag at the API level, and it hopefully does what you want it to do. And the other point about feature detection is that JavaScript is very friendly to reuse and sharing, so we see a lot of different projects spawning that address these needs. And now we're sort of getting into the some other concepts here where HTML5 is becoming very robust. And I don't know how many people saw this post from a week or two ago about Broadway.js. Have you guys heard of this? This is a JavaScript-based H.264 decoder. So they just took, and you can see like the frame rates on a desktop browser are slightly faster than real time. And they took a C-based H.264 decoder and cross-compiled it to JavaScript, threw it in the browser, and now you can play H.264 even if the browser doesn't support it natively. And so that's just indicative. I mean, not that I would recommend going out and trying to deploy the solution somewhere, but the point is that the HTML5 platform is becoming very robust, and you can see real complicated. Even that H.264 decoding is even complicated for desktops, right? Like if you don't do it right on a desktop player, it's going to be choppy and not decode in real time. And the fact that we're now able to sort of see it running in a browser faster than real time on a desktop browser is indicative of where things are headed. And and part of the other point that I was making before is, oops, wrong button. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it anyway, but it also runs on your phone because we're able to push out these modern browsers, even though the Android doesn't update to. I'm running a nightly build of Firefox or something on this device, and it's able to take advantage of the latest features of JavaScript and able to decode the video on a phone as well in JavaScript. Doesn't work very well, probably eats the battery very quickly. But the point is that the HTML5 platform overall is becoming very robust and supportive of a lot of features. Here's the Google Maps thing I was talking about earlier. This is using Webgl. You notice that it's very smooth. It sort of looks more like a native application. It doesn't have that sort of choppy tile-based thing going on. And if we drop a person in here, we like sort of do like these 3D zooms and everything. It's this is also, they ported over their Street View into native HTML5. This is not Flash. So they're able to do much more rich applications, all in the browser that's using WebGL. And of course, I'll just briefly mention that we use a lot of, the reason of a lot of this stuff being of interest is we're using a lot of these tools to sort of build out our player. We use the cache manifest and try to take advantage of as many of the HTML5 technologies as we can in sort of in a practical sense when building out our HTML5 player. Looking to the future, we're going to see WebRTC, which is this really neat standard for real-time communication. I saw a great demo of this at the Open Video Conference just a month ago, where the guy was able to call his Firefox browser from his telephone, and he was able to use his laptop as a giant telephone. So all over VoIP channel, direct communication, peer-to-peer. So we're going to see a lot of neat things once WebRTC starts propagating out. And I think we'll see a little bit more better support for input devices, so game controllers and things like that. So it's a lot more features coming down the pipe. So get ready for lots of exciting stuff. And it's just very indicative. I think this example here of the H.264 decoder all in the browser is also indicative of where things are headed, where we're going to have full-blown applications in HTML5. And we're going to want to try to take advantage of those as best we can. And that means thinking about HTML5 as working on mini screens with the same application. So we're going to be able to support types of interactions where you have your phone, you walk into a space, and now your phone's interacting with your game console, or your computer automatically sort of syncs up what you're reading from your phone to your computer. And you can see that a lot already with just basic browser sync technologies if you use those on your phone. And again, what I mentioned earlier on, the HTML5 powering a lot of native applications, just people are going to want to save time, write their application once in HTML5, and then have native wrappers for all the devices in order to push it out into the various distribution channels that the web stores for the Androids and the Amazon Kindles and the iOS App Store. So yeah, that's about it. I think I have 10 minutes for questions or so. I'm Michael Dale, who run the website html5video.org, and I work with Kaltura and also work with Wikipedia. And just opened up to questions in case anybody has any. I know it's kind of overwhelming quantity of information there. I hope I haven't saturated people too much. But yeah. It doesn't have to be a question specifically. It could just be some thoughts on the matter.
Which browser does the Google Maps demo run in?
This is Chrome 15. This is the release version of Chrome.
Does it only work there?
No, it also works in Firefox. If you have a nightly of Firefox, it also works in the. It may work in Safari. I don't know what Safari's WebGL support is like, but it does. I have seen it working in Firefox. Yeah.
What's the proportion of HTML5 capable browsers out there installed that's working on Google's?
So earlier we saw a chart that put it at about 45%. There's been a few charts here, like all the charts where they should say like, oh, the video tag is only supported in 50% of browsers or something. Another chart had it at 65%. I guess it depends how exactly you measure it, but it's definitely growing fast. You can see it growing really quickly for the next few years because.
When do you think you'll hit like 80%, 90%?
Probably by some end of next year, I believe, we'll probably start to push out, get away from all the IE7s and IE8s. Those are the big anchors right now. And Microsoft's going to be pushing really hard to get everybody to update with their new operating system. And I think also it almost you also have to look at sort of how it's expanding too. Like it's not going to just be desktop browsers. We're also going to see game consoles and lots of new tablets and phones are part of this pool of HTML5 support. So it's not just that you're targeting the desktop anymore. It's the whole ecosystem. Yeah.
What's your sense or prediction of how this is going to affect native apps? I mean, is this going to replace iOS and Android native apps?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think what I mentioned it a few times in the talk. I really think it's very likely that most native apps are going to be HTML5 backend for most of the basic interface components, and then we will have sort of native wrappers that make it appropriate for any given platform. And that's just because it'll save a lot of time for people if they want to write it for Windows Phone, Android, and iOS. The only common component of those platforms is an HTML5 base for your application. And so then you can write it once and probably get 95% there, and then you have the 5% native wrapper tool like PhoneGap or Acceler, whatever Titanium. Yeah, that application, that system as well, that will wrap and bridge those gaps. Like say you need to take a photo, or you need to do something, or you need to play some graphics that need an intro graphic or something that needs high acceleration or native support. You can mix and match HTML5 with the native capabilities of that device if you need them. Yeah.
So we're working on a project that's very video heavy, and we're trying to create a single HTML5 website for as many platforms as possible. But one of our key use cases is actually in the developing world and in the Middle East and Africa. And I just read a Wall Street Journal article about smartphone usage in Nigeria just exploding.
Right.
I mean, do you have any thoughts about kind of best case for trying? We're trying to get the widest reach for a very video heavy site, and we're still doing renditions in Flash. I'm imagining some like ancient Dell in the middle of Tanzania running IE6 or something. I mean, some users are just going to be inaccessible. But what are your thoughts about trying to get that broad reach, and how far some of the other parts of the world are coming in terms of the browser background?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're seeing a little bit of leapfrogging, like you've mentioned, like that article. I think I read the same one, and they have they've got the Android devices down to like $100 or something like that, and they're just printing them out like hotcakes or whatever, and they're getting out there really fast, and that's just going to be an HTML5 underneath there if you want to get that reach with some rich application. I mean, maybe for those older Androids you do. I mean, again, you use some sort of cross-platform compiler solution that gives you maybe use the native app for the video component of your application. I don't know. I think we're definitely seeing some leapfrogging, and I think it's all going to converge on sort of some base level HTML5 platform in the short term.
So we developed for enterprise and we're stuck with old browsers and older operating systems. So we're struggling right now to decide what to do because we want to take advantage of some new HTML5 features. We're looking at ASF widgets and things like that. And what would you recommend to something that could take advantage of both and still work, take advantage of new features, but still work on the older browsers? But
yeah, I would certainly not recommend like, oh, throwing away my Flash player right now. I don't know. That's not what I mean.
Well, we're HTML5 is Silverlight, but I just
right. Maybe throw away the
Silverlight around
one.
it. Just trying to figure out.
Might not be around as long, but yeah, you'd have to take a look at your particular use cases and see what fits best for your particular application. And I think there's some pieces of, I didn't get into this as much as I could have, I suppose, but there's some components of HTML5 that are really well supported, like stuff that was in IE8, like the iframe post message JavaScript component, where you can do cross-domain iframe communication as long as you say IE8 and above. There's certain pieces of it that are coming together, and there's like JavaScript wrappers for IE8 as well that can sort of mimic some of this functionality. Like, for example, the doing SVG, basic SVG stuff with VRML that was sort of supported in the Internet Explorer browsers. But yeah, I think it just depends on your particular application and figuring out what pieces make sense to port over. And it's not like this super crazy big rush. I mean, if you have your Flash stuff working now, then that's something that you can build off and continue to use while you develop your HTML5 solution that integrates into the same system. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Do you have to be a HTML5 expert to create a presentation like this, or is there an app available?
I wrote it using TextPad. Here it is. But you can copy that. It's actually from, the base template I got from HTML5rocks.com. So some of those slides are copied over from them, and you can just use if you can read HTML, it's actually really not that complicated. It's just, here's the slide, here's the header, and then whatever HTML piece you want to show there. So it's not too tricky to do if you're familiar with HTML. But I'm glad you noted the slide show being in HTML5. Yeah, go ahead.
My understanding HTML5 field does not provide a lot of features like page control or script. But when you showed your video clip, it looks like you have a lot of playback control underneath. How could you?
So that's the video tag includes a JavaScript API, and you're able to listen to events like the playhead progress, and you're able to trigger events when the user presses play. It can start the video playback or pause it. So it has an API that's defined through a specification, and you use that to interact with the player and make an interface. And the neat thing is you can use all those different components when you're building those interfaces. So the SVG graphics, for example, you can use those as your player controls or something. And also use all those CSS tricks to make it easier to deal with designing a player interface. And it's always a good bet that your browser supports some of those other HTML5 features if you have the baseline video tag supported. Any other comments, questions? I guess we're moving on with the day. Thank everybody for coming, and feel free to talk to me anytime.